morning, everybody. Welcome back to At America TV. Hi, I'm Maya Trainer, one of the guides here at America, and we welcome our audience joining us online. We truly hope that you are doing well and stay safe amidst this outbreak. Well, anyway, for those of you who are first-timers here, hi, welcome to At America TV for the first time. At America is the U.S. Embassy's American Center, and our mission is to provide a space for young generations of Indonesia to learn more about the United States. We temporarily moved to our solely digital platform so you can enjoy our program from the comfort of your own home and help fund the curve of COVID-19. Don't forget to leave your questions in the comment box below, and our panelists will answer them later in this seminar. Now, today we will be having a session titled Inclusion 101 Exchange Program Enhancing Political Experiences for Youth with Disabilities. By the way, did you know, as a continuation of our 10th anniversary celebration, we are having a very special activity each month with different giveaways. This August, we have Academania, in which we are giving out a voucher for TOEFL IBT test and another American standardized test of your choice. How exciting! For further information, you can visit atam.tv/academania. In the meantime, I'm going to break the ice a little bit with our social media quiz. You ready? Okay, so our question of the day is it true or false that Education and Cultural Affairs, or ECA, exchange program alumni encompass 500,000 people around the world? I will repeat the question one more time. Listen carefully, all right? Is it true or false that Education and Cultural Affairs, or ECA, exchange program alumni encompass 500,000 people around the world? You can participate this quiz through our social media comment section, and stay tuned till the end of this event to find out if you got the answers right. And now, without further ado, please welcome our moderator for today. He is a 2020 U.S. Department of State Alumni Impact Award winner, Mas Abi Marutama. Mas Abi, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Rise and shine. How are you today? I hope you are doing great. So now we are on public holiday now, but we are going to talk about probably it's not really a hard stuff, but I hope that it isn't boring, so it will enhance your knowledge about why is it important for young people to learn about politics, because we are the ones who will continue to improve our society, to improve our nations, and to continue the fight that our predecessors have started before. So, as usual, my name is Abi. I'm your today's moderator. So we are now going to talk about Inclusion 101 Episode 10, Exchange Program Enhancing Political Experiences for Youth with Disabilities. But before that, I would like to wish you a happy Islamic New Year for all of you who celebrate it. And I wish you and your family an amazing year, and I hope you are doing great for this year, and I hope you can achieve whatever you are trying to get in this year. So let me talk about the background of this program first. So as older generation are retiring from the social justice and human rights activism, young people with and without disabilities are trusted to carry out the activism and improve it to achieve social justice and equality for all. However, young people with and without disabilities in developing world are faced with a harsh reality, which is they are denied the right to take part in decision-making processes through official political channels, such as being elected as members of Congress and being appointed as public officials. In order to enter official political institutions, young people in developing countries need to learn several strategies and employ them appropriately. One way to do so is they may attend a series of professional fellowship programs focused on good governance and legislative processes offered by the US government. The US exchange programs are expected to provide young people, particularly those with disabilities, with opportunities and experiences in which they can learn and apply them upon their return to their home countries. Today, we will hear from our distinguished speakers about why exchange programs are important for young people and how the US exchange programs can help young people, particularly those with disabilities, to develop political strategies to influence policymaking processes based on first-hand experiences they have had in the United States. Now we have three distinguished speakers with us now. First, I would like to invite Dr. Aisha Rousseau, Director Division of Disability Rights Agency for Human Rights and Community Partnership, City and County of Denver. And then our second speaker is Dr. Antoni Tsaputra. He is the 2014 ICMA Professional Fellow, and the last speaker is Miss Lengga Pradipta. She is the 2017 YSEALI Professional Fellow. So, how are you, everyone?
We are doing great. Thank you, Mas Abi.
How are you, Dr. Aisha?
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for joining us from Denver, and it is evening now.
It is. It's late in the evening, but it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Antoni, how are you?
Good. I'm very good. Thank you, Abi.
Okay, thank you. So, okay, let's start a question with Dr. Aisha. So, I know that disability rights activism in the United States during 1970s was initiated by young people with disabilities, such as Judith Human and then Danny Sherrill Jacobson and Neil Jacobson. And this was the first major people with disabilities political movement that successfully brought Americans with disabilities to enjoy their rights. Meanwhile, in other parts of the world, people with disabilities political movements are not as advanced as in the US. So what do you think young people with disabilities in other countries must do to advance their rights? And is there any lesson from America's disability rights political movement that you can share with us?
Yes, I'll answer the second part first. And I think out of the lesson, I'll share what young people with disabilities in other countries can do to advance rights. I think about a group that was birthed right here in Denver, Colorado, and they were the foundation for the main law that still carries on to this day, the federal law, the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so the group that was located here in Denver was referred to as the Gang of 19. It was a group of men and women who literally threw themselves out of their wheelchairs in front of buses in an attempt to convey that they were being disenfranchised. This group blocked the intersection. There's even a memorial downtown in their honor. They blocked intersections of streets day and night, and they chanted, "We will ride, we will ride," referring to the buses. Their protests were about the buses not being wheelchair accessible. Their mission was to ensure that wheelchair lifts were installed on buses. Many of those individuals that led those protests went on to lead protests really anywhere that you could imagine in the United States that were not accessible. That included Social Security buildings, healthcare areas, churches, housing communities, casinos, post offices, the list goes on. And so I believe, to answer your first question, what is it that young people with disabilities and other countries must do to advance their rights? Very simply put, is not take no for an answer. To continue to push forward and know that there are people living with and people not living with disabilities all over the world that are supporting our colleagues and our friends throughout the world, and believing that people with disabilities should not be disenfranchised, but should have equal rights. And so never taking no for an answer.
Wow, that's very striking. Yeah, I believe so, because when we say that we say no, it means that we refuse what the government is trying to is trying to do to us, when what the government thinks is probably not appropriate for us, because it is very often that government policies are made without our consent. So that is why we have to sometimes refuse and talk to them, and even probably do some protests if possible, because sometimes the government are quite persistent, so they don't want to hear what we are suggesting. So that is why we have to manifest our ideas in the forms of protest. I agree with you. So now I have a question to Dr. Antoni. I know that you are a political scientist and political expert. So, and you have done quite a lot of research on disability rights movement in global north. So what are the striking differences between disability rights political movements in the global north and the global south, and how can these differences affect disability rights activism in different countries? So Dr. Antoni?
Okay, thanks very much, Abi, and the America team for having me here again. Well, that's a difficult question to respond that may end up being a scientific journal writing in critical disability studies. All right, I'm not quite a political expert, so I think I'm just going to offer my thoughts in regards to such differences based on the existing relevant studies, of course. Before that, I think we need to be clear first with such contested terms as the global north and the global south. Well, these terms are broadly used to refer to the socio-economic and political divide between richer and poorer nations. However, this view has been considered simplistic by some development scholars, because many poorer countries have experienced significant economic and social development, and therefore global north or global south may refer to richer or poorer communities, which can be found both within and between countries. So I think the use of global north or south terms in disability politics context should align with critical disability studies that use this as the metaphors, which are more political and theoretical than geographic. Well, as you know, some critical disabled scholars argue that disability studies emerge from the global north and have been exported to the global south without reference to the thoughts of disability theories from and different contexts in the global south. Well, for example, characteristics of disability policy in the global north, for example, individualized funding or individual budgeting, and a focus on intrinsic rather than an extrinsic needs may not be suitable in the global south that represents the majority of the world population in poorer economies. So I think the key reason for this, among others, because the infrastructure and public facilities in the global south are generally poorer, and so extrinsic collective needs may be more significant to address in order to ensure disabled people's access to such basic human rights as education, health, and employment. And therefore, those authors have raised their concerns about the entrenchment of this British social model of disability in the UNCRPD. Despite such concerns, what's happening in the global north undoubtedly has a positive impact on disability activism in the global south, including Indonesia. So prior to the UNCRPD signing and ratification by the Indonesian government, and particularly during the New Order regime, the government, the Indonesian government, created a range of organizations of people with disabilities. And a number of these organizations were established on the basis of disability type. But there was an improvement in which, at the very least, there were organizations of the disabled, a matter of people with disabilities. So this was like a step in the right direction compared with organizations established during the 1950s, which were organizations for the disabled, established by non-disabled people. Nevertheless, the New Order disability associations or organizations were focused primarily on finding and bringing together people with disabilities under one umbrella, rather than on mobilizing them or campaigning for changes on their behalf. So it was only in the 1990s that a small number of activists began to mobilize around disability rights in Indonesia. In 1991, Indonesia's first disability NGO called Dria Manunggal. I believe that you may have read or learned a lot about this organization, Abi. Dria Manunggal was an institute of research, empowerment, and development for people with different abilities. So this organization was established in Yogyakarta. So this organization started as a discussion group amongst people with disabilities, especially young people with disabilities, who were trying to understand the structural marginalization. So as an organization, Dria Manunggal looked to the disability movement in other parts of the world, such as the USA, the UK, and in India, as well as to other social movements, such as the women's movement and environment movement, for ideas about how to organize constituents and then to drive social change. So Dria Manunggal's founders were particularly influenced by ideas emerging from the USA and the United Kingdom about a social model of disability, which was then gaining considerable traction amongst disability activists worldwide. And as in many other countries around the world, the CRPD provided a platform for activists in Indonesia, to campaign for changes to their disability laws. So the signing of the CRPD became the foundation for activists to lobby for policy change consistent with the social model of disability. So offering them a kind of framework for proposing changes to the 1997 National Disability Law. And this CRPD also paved the way for more international funding for disability-related activities around the world, including in Indonesia, where various international donors, including the Disability Rights Fund, or DRF, which is based in the USA, and also other international donors. They all then began new programs and support programs for the DPOs in many developing countries, including in Indonesia, related to disability rights movement. And then the main focus of disability activists since the ratification of the CRPD, I think, has been campaigning for Indonesian legislation about disability to change so that it better aligns with this convention, which is underpinned by the social model of disability. And also, of course, to ensure its comprehensive implementation. I think that will be my responses to your first question, Abi, and apology if it was too long an explanation.
And it's okay. I think you made a point there. I can summarize your answer that the movement in the global north has quite influence for the movement in Indonesia, because you mentioned that we try to look for a model, for a good model in the UK and in the US. What kind of disability rights movements that can help us to advance our disability rights in Indonesia? And I think this is perhaps because of between the Western and the Eastern cultures, which are very different. So I know that in Western cultures that everyone is taught to contest everything. So everyone is taught not to believe immediately to what people say. They have to validate the information first, and even they may contest the information given by governments or given by other authorities. But in I think in Eastern culture, there is a culture in which we are taught to accept everything, and not to contest everything what the government says and what authorities impose. So that is why it is quite hard for people with disabilities during, I think, 1970s and 1980s and 1990s under the New Order regime to raise their voices, because the government doesn't, at the time, the government didn't want people to protest what the government imposed. So that is why I think it was quite a challenge. But after Indonesia is open for, after Indonesia was open for democracy in late in the end of 1990s, I think this is that this was a good start for people with disabilities to start raising their voices, just like what people with disabilities did in the United States. So now I would like to move to Lengga Pradipta. So Lengga is a political scientist at Indonesian Institute of Science. So Lengga, as you are a young person, so I would like to know about your opinion, because I know that when we talk about politics with our young peers, they tend to ignore what we say, because they think that politics is dirty and politics is manipulative, something like that. So can you tell us why is it important for young people to begin paving a pathway to politics?
Okay, thank you, Mas Abi. It's a very interesting questions because nowadays, if media talks about politics, everyone becomes so debatable and are so crowded in the media, giving such comments or giving such I don't know, hatred opinions. So it's really good question for shaping our insight in politics. Okay, well, why is it very important for young people to start it aware with politics? Well, talking about politics means we're talking about participations. So participation is not just become the member of the parliament, but also, well, you can be a active voters, and then you can take actions in volunteering area, and so many things that you can do. So, if we want to take a look at the previous research by the Farba and me, they say that political participation is actually everyone's right. So, everyone, without neglecting their their race and their age, their sexes, they have like rights to speak about their political views. So, political participation is actually activities that are more or less directly, which is aimed to influencing selections of government, personnel, or the parliament. Why I highlighted influence? Because in political participations, we can make some good changes in the future. So I believe that young generation is hold a very crucial role here. Why I said so, as we know that our biggest population right now is young people. So like millennials and Gen Z is our biggest number today. So can you imagine if they didn't participate in politics? What happened in 10 or 20 years started from now? It will be dominated still by the old generation. Meanwhile, we know that old generations still have odd mindset. They're not engaging with the social media like us. They're not engaging like global dynamic like us, like young people. So I think it's very important. And then we know that young people may offer many things in politics. They have a refresh idea, and they could renew the systems and they could maintain it through the leadership, through innovation, and through other skills. Well, actually, if we want to try to take a look why they they are started to have willingness in politics, it's actually started in their school. So nowadays, school is have a advanced curriculum, so they're not just talking about making a duties or assignment, but they are more outspoken in school. For example, in Indonesia we have like a student organization, so it could be the first um, trajectories to shaping your awareness of politics. So I think it's very important. So I'm back to you.
Right. Thank you, Lengga. So I noticed that old generations are not doing what we are doing, like engage in social media, but they use billboards to promote themselves, which is, I think, kind of old-fashioned. I don't know whether in the United States, the congressman candidates still use billboards, but I've never seen any billboards that promote candidates, like governor candidates or presidential candidates. I think no. But here in Indonesia, billboards are very popular to promote uh, to promote congressional candidates and presidential candidates, which is weird, I think, for Americans. Okay, thank you, Lengga. And before I move to Dr. Aisha again, I would like to tell our audiences that for those all of you who are watching us from at America social media, you can ask any questions you have, or you can make comments on at America social media platforms, and then I will read your questions and your comments, and our speakers will be happy to answer your questions later. And then I would also like to thank our Indonesian interpreters. So we have Cindra and Innova who help us to interpret what we are saying now, what we are discussing now, from English to Indonesian Sign Language. Thank you for both of you for your great job. And now I would like to move to Dr. Aisha. So Dr. Aisha, disability rights activism in America has inspired, sorry, I will repeat again. Disability rights activism in America has inspired people with disabilities in other parts of the world to claim their rights and demand that governments should protect and fulfill their rights. What do you think the American leadership can do to help young people with disabilities around the world get their voices heard by their governments and societies? Dr. Aisha?
I'm sorry, I had put myself on mute. Thank you.
Okay.
There are a couple of programs that come to mind for me that really have this combined mission of disability advocacy rights, as well as partnering with international groups and particularly young people who are interested in doing human rights work as it relates to disabilities. I think that it's a wonderful opportunity, some of these programs that have been generated, and it is an outlet for the United States to be able to share a lot of what's going on with our evolving laws and evolving ordinances specific to disability rights laws. A couple of organizations that come to mind for me, the first one is ACYPL, or American Council of Young Political Leaders. It is a State Department funded program. I had the honor of having a fellow from ACYPL in my office just a few years ago. They arranged for fellowships for young professionals in government in Southeast Asia to spend a month learning about US government programs through fellowships in the United States cities. So the young lady that came and worked with me was from Cambodia. She was very interested in understanding how Cambodian laws and how American laws were similar as they related to people with disabilities and how they were different. It was a very enriching experience. Another organization that's local here in Denver, Colorado, is an organization called World Denver. They bring about 600 international visitors from over 120 countries to Denver annually in collaboration with the US Department of State through the International Visitors Leadership Program. And their mission is to promote a greater understanding of world affairs and cultures throughout Denver and create and implement unique programs that connect Coloradans, or people that live here in Colorado, with experts, leaders, and ideas from all over the world. It too is a great program to really just be able to collaborate and share ideas about things that are going well in our respective countries as it relates to disability rights, as well as things that could be improved. And finally, one the Harkin Institute. I'm not sure how many people here are familiar with Senator Harkin, who was integral in helping to pass the Americans with Disabilities Act. He began what's known as the Harkin Institute in Iowa many years ago. It's the Harkin Institute for Public Policy and Citizen Engagement. And the mission is to inform citizens, inspire creative cooperation, and catalyze change on issues of social justice, fairness, and opportunity. And they really focus on policymakers and citizen engagement as it relates to disability-related issues and other types of concerns. And so these are three organizations that come to mind for me that are great examples of the way that nonprofits or American organizations are lending expertise and an opportunity for collaboration and ideas to help young people all around the world get their voices, get to the table and have their voices heard.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Aisha. So you have mentioned three wonderful organizations that we can get in touch with. And of course, we will talk about this a little bit further later, how we can, perhaps how we can get in touch with each of these organizations that you mentioned, and how can we like make a partnership between Indonesians and Americans to help each other, to support each other in terms of upholding justice and democracy, particularly in terms of disability rights movement. Thank you. And then I would like to move to Dr. Antoni. So Dr. Antoni, as older disability rights activists are gradually retiring from disability rights activism, young people with disabilities are interested to continue their activism. However, they may lack knowledge about politics and law, which are important for the advocacy of disability rights. Do you think that an exchange program can help them to understand knowledge about politics and law better? And perhaps you may answer this question based on your first-hand experience when you did the fellowship program in the United States.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that's a great question. Well, I think some older disability rights activists are still in the fight, and they will never retire. Yeah, well, knowledge about politics and disability laws is indeed important for young disability activists. However, I believe that such knowledge is not the only key to sustainable progressive disability activism in Indonesia. I think the mentoring and capacity building role of senior disability activists or more resourceful disability organizations in generating more knowledgeable and critical young Indonesian disability activists would be very important as well. We have seen a few best practices showcased by such resourceful disability NGO like SIGAP in making sure sustainable progressive disability activism in the hands of next generation of disability activists. With support from various donor organizations, including the international donors, they have several mentoring programs for emerging young disability activists from many regions across Indonesia. Interestingly, we can witness several progressive disability organizations also have built various networking with local DPOs to strengthen the capacity of local disability activists. For example, a network called Formasi or a Forum of Indonesian disability activists for oversight or monitoring the government policies on disability inclusion and fulfillment of the rights of persons with disability in Indonesia. So this network was initiated by several senior disability activists from resourceful and progressive disability NGOs, such as SIGAP, Perdik, and many others. They developed disability rights indicators comprising 3 main elements: structure, process, and outcome, that serve as a monitoring instrument to evaluate the realization of disability rights in Indonesia. So they have been providing weekly virtual capacity building training and workshops for all members of this network on understanding this monitoring instrument and how to use it. I think this kind of great effort, we also need continuous international support, not only in the form of we call that resources, but also various capacity building programs such as an exchange program. So I think it would be undoubtedly helpful to have specific exchange programs for young disability activists, aiming to provide first-hand learning experience from disability organizations in the US, for example. I think Mobility International USA, which is supported by the US Department of State, is one great example of such an exchange program. Dr. Rousseau also has mentioned some examples of how American DPOs have also provided opportunities for this sort of exchange program with disability activists from other parts of the world. About my experience from the exchange program that I attended, I think that should be the third question, or can I just respond it right away?
Yeah, I think you can respond.
All
to
right.
it.
Okay. So back in 2014, I participated in the ICMA Professional Fellowship Program on legislative process and governance, at City of Austin, Texas, and Washington, D.C. So it was a collaborative program between ICMA and Indonesian Municipal Government Association with support from the U.S. Department of State. Well, I surely did learn a lot from participating in that program, and I'm forever grateful for such a once in a lifetime valuable opportunity. So during my internship at Austin City Government, I could see how people with disability, including youth with disability, take part in politics. So taking part in politics does not necessarily mean only voting in the election. Of course, this can also mean enabling people with disability, including youth with disability, to influence policies that are important to their lives. So Austin City, and I believe other cities in the US, has a mechanism that allows its citizens to speak directly to their elected officials. So from my colleagues at Adapt, Texas, this is a long-established DPO in Austin. I learned valuable lessons about their persistence or perseverance in influencing the local government policies for so many years. So the city government also listens to them and accommodate their proposals and demands. So I was fortunate to attend one of the city council meeting in which people with disability there speak to their elected officials, and I was also given an honor at the time to speak at that very meeting. So that was an amazing experience to me. Speaking of formal political processes, I think it is worth highlighting as well a progress in Indonesia that we have seen more people with disability, including young disability activists, running in the general elections, particularly in the 2019 general election. In a study conducted by the Sydney Southeast Asia Center, in which I was also part of it, we interviewed 23 candidates with a disability out of nearly 40 candidates who ran in the 2019 general election. So the interviews were conducted after the election was over. So interviews were asked about their previous experience in politics, their motivation for running for office, the relationships with the political party with which they ran, and obstacles they faced. And for the most part, we found that candidates with disability ran because of their commitment to disability inclusion in Indonesia. Yeah, so for example, they identified campaigning for rights of people with disability as their motivation for running. Yeah, others explained that they felt that formal politics was a more effective platform than activism for making change. So I think that demonstrates that politics can be one of possible or viable avenues for disability activists to advocate for the rights of people with disability, particularly in Indonesia. I think that's it, Abi.
Okay, Dr. Antoni, thank you so much for your answer. Now I would like to move to Lengga. So, Lengga, many young Indonesians find themselves difficult to get access to formal political institutions because of the domination of old politicians, like you mentioned earlier. Do you think that by joining an exchange program and learning how young people with can engage in informal political institutions from developed countries like the US can help them to access formal political institutions and directly involve in decision making processes?
Okay, thank you, Masabi. Yes, I do believe that through the exchange program, we could learn more about political institutions, especially the formal one, and it helps us to, involving more in decision making process. So, before jumping to United States situations, I want to dig up some factual condition in Indonesia. Why we need to join the exchange program. So as we know that in Indonesia, we have plenty of educated people. In my age, like in between 25 and 35, there are so many educated people, but then they don't have opportunity to expanding their political participation. Why? So actually, there are three basic reasons why it happens. First, even though they have degree and education, they don't have capitals. So capital here doesn't mean only financial capital, but also social capital. So some of the youth doesn't have wider networking. So it becomes their biggest obstacles to be jump into the politics. Well, we know that maybe a lot of example like maybe Samara from PSI parties and um, well I don't want to say the name, but um, that person is very powerful and he's young, but he has legacy from the parents. So it seems like social capital and financial capital are become the biggest reason why the young people should join in the politic, and it also become an obstacle. And the second one, like what I've mentioned earlier, that boomers still wanted to have power over politics. Well, based on the data from the Indonesian Institute of Sciences, my institution, it's clearly stated that 70% of parliament dominated by boomers. So it's a shocking fact, but it's true. And then Unfortunately, the third point, that media such as television or let's say another platform, newspaper, is still owned by the powerful person. So it becomes the biggest obstacle for Indonesian young people to join politics. And that's why um, young people like me, well, we search for another knowledge from developed countries like US to learn more, because sometimes in Indonesia, we didn't have such opportunities to do that. So I think that's why the exchange program is very important. So furthermore, if we want to take a look at the latest data, young people in almost half of the world population is under 30 years old, is only 3% engaging in politics, and 2% is male. So can you imagine the proportion is not very sufficient to spoke our opinions. So that's the vivid conditions of Indonesia and maybe other developing countries. So that's why this platform is very influential to shaping my, you know, my willingness to speak. And of course, it through this program, me and my friends, which whom are very shy at first, we are more having such awareness to make something to engaging more people into politics. So it's a good platform, I guess.
Yes, I
Thank you.
agree with you that that exchange programs really help us to open our horizon of knowledge, especially in terms of the differences between the United States and Indonesia in terms of youth political participation. So I just remembered that um, a deaf female, a young deaf female in the United States, she was very, she is um, very intriguing because um, she has a strong voice in terms of disability advocacy in the United States, and she's very young, and she can influence even people in at the Capitol Hill, and even when she spoke at the UN General Assembly, um, she enlightened old politicians from around the world why uh, it is important for the inclusion of people with disabilities in every aspect of life, and why we need to give access for deaf people to sign language, because they tend to be left behind, um, because we don't give them the access to a means to for them to communicate. And I think um, we don't have such a figure in Indonesia. We don't have yet, even though I know that there are some people with this young people with disabilities who work for government institutions, but um, they are making progress, but they don't. I mean, they don't have yet make significant changes. Probably because, like you mentioned, there are still obstacles um, because of old politicians tend to dominate um, the lawmaking and policy making processes, and they tend to um, left young people behind when the lawmaking and policy making processes are made. So thank you, Lengga. And I would like to move to Dr. Aisha again. So, Dr. Aisha, the U.S. Department of State has been long promoted international disability rights through its long-term and short-term educational programs. As an American who has an experience of being a host for an exchange program, like you mentioned earlier, how do you see these educational programs can help people, can help young activists with disabilities uh, around the world to devise strategic political movement to influence policymaking and lawmaking processes in their countries?
Thank you for the question. I think when I think about the young lady from ACYPL that came to our office, one of the things that I was most proud of in being able to serve as a host for her to come in and observe, I'd be remiss not to mention I do work for a government agency. And so I don't ever want us to think that it has to be community versus government, because that is not how it has to be at all. Here in the United States, government, we look at our structure a lot of times. I work for the mayor, but above the mayor are the citizens of our city and the constituents of our city. That is ultimately who we are reporting to. We are public servants who are serving our community. And so for me, it's been important when we have had fellows come to our office and be able to host, that they actually see that there are people in our office. We are a division of disability rights. Within our division, there are young people who are living with disabilities. Our ADA coordinator, which is an integral role in not just the Division of Disability Rights or not just our agency for human rights and community partnerships, but the entire city. The ADA coordinator covers a myriad of things across the entire city. Our ADA coordinator is a young woman who is also deaf. We also have other people housed within our agency and even within my particular office who self-identify as people living with disabilities. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, again, government versus community, but how can we all work together? How can we come together? And what better way to do that than to actually have people embedded within government who are representative of the disability population here in Denver. And so I think about the young lady that came again to our office from Cambodia. And one of the things that I found to be powerful is that we were able to share and talk about strategies and ideas around the way things were happening in Cambodia, as well as the way that policies and ordinances were happening here in the United States. And we were able to share these ideas. I gleaned information from her. She gleaned information from me. It wasn't just a one way, I'm an American and I'm giving you all of this information, but she was sharing with me about how she had been working in community and how they had been improving their community services for Cambodians living with disabilities. And we were really able to walk away from that experience with richer ideas about how we could collaborate with community and how we could advocate for enhanced and increased laws and policies such that individuals with disabilities have even greater rights.
Yes, yeah, I totally agree with you. So we should not fight each other. Between the civil society and the government, they should work together. And I think it's not something that we really do have here in Indonesia. So, for example, I think when people work for NGOs, the way they think they should attack the government with their arguments, and then the government fights back to respond the differences that NGOs make. But I hardly notice that something like that happens in the US. Perhaps it happens, but I think it doesn't happen a lot. As far as I'm concerned, the AAPD, they really work closely with the US Department of Labor to make sure that the Office of, what is it, Disability Rights, if
Yes.
I'm not mistaken, yes, to make sure that people with disabilities get decent employment they desire, and should they be denied the right to their employment, and they can file complaint to both AAPD or the Department of Labor, and they will uh, figure it out. They will help that person to get um, the employment that they desire. But I think here in Indonesia, some NGOs, I mean some disability rights NGOs, are making progress. They are now working closely with the government, especially the central government, to implement the Indonesian with Disability Act that we has just passed in 2016, in 2016. and and I know that there were some help back then from the US government, especially USAID, to support the implementation of the Indonesian with Disability Act, which is very good. So I would like to move to Lengga now with the final question before we move to questions from our audiences. So Lengga, you are not a disabled person, but during the exchange program, you interacted with I believe persons with disabilities from the United States and from other countries. So what lesson can you share with us about the importance of inclusion of people with disabilities in its aspect of like you mentioned before, politics is all about full participation.
Okay, Mas Abi, thank you very much. For this is the final question, but it's very, I mean, such a big enlightenment for us. So I learned a lot in Eugene, Oregon during my fellowships. What makes me amazed is actually how Eugenian people treat everyone with equalities. So there's no racial there. There's no um, uh, disturbance or debatable on the people with disabilities or black people. So they're very natural to everyone. And what surprised me is actually the way they're engaging in formal political institution. For example, I saw that young people could directly talk to their government. They could talk to the mayor, they could talk to the parliament without any hesitation. So they have a platform for that at least once in 2 weeks. And there's no um, reluctant feeling to wrote in blog or in another media about the real condition in Eugene. So people and young people there has such freedom to do that. So there is no ban from the government if we wrote a lot about Eugene conditions. So it's really amazed me actually. And the last one, I didn't see ceremonial things there, which is if I compare to developing countries, there are so many ceremonial event or ceremonial introductions, which sometimes makes us feel, well, I think I'm not a part of it. So it makes us inferior. And it didn't happen in Eugene, actually, at that time.
Mm.
So the equalities which offered by Eugene, Oregon, that's the lesson learned, which I think make a big contributions in my life until now. Okay, thank you so much, Masabi.
Okay, thank you so much, Lengga, for your answer. Now we are going to answer some questions from social media. Now we have questions from Twitter. So what's the okay? The question is, what's the best way to give help and empower as an able person? Because one of the biggest problem in giving help is sometimes an able person tend to unintentionally giving pity, which is not good for empowerment. So I think this question is let me get this question to Dr. Aisha. So how can an able person help people with disabilities, but they give but they help them in an appropriate way? So it should not give a sign that they give charity to the person they help. So it's about empowerment, not to convey some signs of pittiness, something like that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I appreciate the question. I personally do not identify as a person with a disability, but I have been working in disability work for a very long time. My answer to that is no different than any other groups that I work with, or even as a Black woman that I identify with, that there are often times when you're working with marginalized or underrepresented groups, and individuals who are part of majority or overrepresented groups have an obligation, they have a responsibility, they have a burden, if you will, to ensure that when folks that are part of that majority group, if they are also a part of that majority group, that they speak truth to power when they are dealing with those majority groups about marginalizing others. So I'll use today as an example. It's evening here in the United States, and so earlier today I had an incident with one of my employees who identifies as a person with a disability, and we were in a fairly interesting and large meeting, and the individual decided that he felt like it was appropriate to make ableist statements to the employee, and really try to put her down because of her disability. She is a trooper. She definitely handled the situation as the excellent. She's a young person, but she handled the situation as a well-seasoned professional. Having said that, though, I recognize that both having a level of privilege and power in this particular situation, and being the director of the office, and also speaking to another person who doesn't identify as a person with a disability, there is a level of responsibility that I have to address this individual's comments and let him know that it's not okay. And so I think that a way that people who do not live with disabilities can empower and stand by and identify allyship with our brothers and sisters who are living with disabilities is not to leave the burden on individuals with disabilities to have to speak truth to power. Having said that, there's also a nuance or a dance, if you will, where we don't get ahead of people that are living with disabilities to be able to speak their piece about how they have been treated, or they can speak their own minds about how they have been treated or dealt with in a particular situation. I think that this idea of pity towards any group, people with disabilities or any group, really comes from a place of a lack of understanding and a lack of community, if you will, and understanding that when my neighbor, when the person next to me achieves, I achieve also, and that pity really helps no one. I think that when those types of ideas, that it's not about pity, it is about doing what is right, can get instilled in people down deep on the inside, we move away from this idea of pity. Nobody profits from giving somebody a hand out, but there is profit for all of us when we give people, everybody, an equitable chance at achieving.
Okay. So Lengga, do you have any additional comments to add something that what Dr. Aisha has said?
Yeah, just want to add some of the real example which I got from the Oregon. Well, it's actually beside the political intentions, provide public facilities to ensure that our and
Lengga, I'm sorry, you're breaking up. We cannot hear you, but we will get back to you later. So we will move to Dr. Antoni first. Sorry, Lengga. So Dr. Antoni, how can able person help people with disabilities in an appropriate way?
Yeah, I really also appreciate that question. Yes, I can't agree more with Dr. Rousseau. So when we talk about disability rights movement, this does not only belong to people who live with disabilities. Yeah, I mean, this is our mutual fight. Yeah, it is our mutual fight against ableism. Ableism is like a system, attitudes, culture, which are not accommodating people with disabilities. So this is the kind of fight that we need to be part of together. You know, I mean, yes, we can see that even in Indonesia, there has been quite a lot of people without disability who are important part of disability movement in Indonesia, and they have made huge contributions to the disability movement. All right, so yes, when we talk about help, it's more like you're giving support. You're giving support for capacity building, for example. You know, I mean, like you know, some colleagues at other NGOs, for example, have more resources. This can also be kind of support they give, you know, to share resources, to share knowledge, you know, to strengthen the capacity of disabled people's organization who need this kind of support. So yeah, but we also should not forget that unfortunately a few people with disability are not really aware of this. I mean, and they are still what we call it they like favor this sort of charity approach than, you know, like mobilizing the resources to for advocacy, for example. And well, people with disability are human beings, you know. I mean, like yeah, we can still see a lot of our brothers and sisters, you know, they beg in the streets, you know, asking for donations from passers-by for something like that. So this is a kind of huge homework that we still need to work on, you know, to raise awareness of people with disability that that they should not resort to begging, for example, and they should show that they have capacity. They should be aware of their rights, and I think this is how people without disability can help as well. To work together with DPOs, to raise awareness as well as build the capacity of people with disability. Yes, I think that's it, Abby.
Okay, thank you. Hello, Lengga. Are you still with us?
Yeah, but the connection is not that good since a big storm here.
Now it's better. Can you
Okay.
can you answer the question?
Yeah, maybe just want to add some of the comments from uh, Dr. Aisha and Dr. Antoni. Yes, I'm obviously agree that even though so many people without disabilities, they have contribution and also have empathy to join in disabilities program and disabilities project. And I think the cooperation between them um, makes such a good impact on the policy making processes, either in local or national. I have some friends in Jabodetabek, in Jakarta area, which are actively involved in the disabilities issue, even though they are not disabled. So I think this is not an issue only for exclusive one. I think to lift it more inclusive could be widespread this issue into the more people. So I think that's all. Hello.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Lengga, for your answer. Okay. Now I would like to read the second question. I think this question is dedicated to Dr. Aisha because it mentions about how the exchange programs during the pandemic can be conducted.
Yeah, that's a great question. It was we did some creative things during the pandemic with the exchange program. I met with several fellows from Southeast Asia through Zoom, and we had the same type of sharing experience from their country, and then I shared from America. We talked about our various laws, some of the things that were I thought was particularly interesting. We talked about some events that had been very significant in our respective countries that had impacted disability laws, and then areas of strength, areas where NGO and government could collaborate more effectively together. But we did all of that via Zoom. And so unfortunately, those fellows were supposed to be coming to America during the time of the pandemic. And for the fellow that came here from Cambodia, I was actually supposed to go to Cambodia in 2020 when the pandemic hit, to learn more about her country in real life. And so, my hope is that we still keep in touch. We still continue to talk. I consider her a colleague. So my hope is that the day will come where all will be well in the world again, to be able to travel, and she and I will be able to share that experience with each other. And the other fellows that I met from Southeast Asia, we will be able to come to the United States. But until that time, we continue to be creative with technology.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Aisha. That's actually what we are doing at the ACYPL. So, for example, the American Council of Young Political Leaders recently has asked me to help with the virtual exchange program that they are conducting with the Southeast Asian Fellows. But just like you mentioned, they were supposed to go to the United States in 2020, but because of this pandemic, they could not go there, and their program has been suspended until further notice. So we don't know when they can come to the United States, but probably in 2022, once everyone gets fully vaccinated, and probably the virus has the virus is gone way by that time. I hope so. But yes, during this time, the only thing that we can do is just doing the virtual meeting like this, like we are doing now, and we discuss some matters in our countries and share some thoughts and insights, and hope that thoughts and insights that we are sharing can be useful and can be implemented in our home countries. That's what we do. But I noticed that some people may get burned out because of the virtual meeting in that has been taking place in quite long. So the situation has discouraged them from fully participating in the program. So that is kind of a challenge that the ACYPL and other exchange program coordinators are experiencing now. And apart of that, I also would like to add some comments to what Dr.Antoni, Lengga, and Dr. Aisha have said, which is about how to help how to give support to people with disabilities. I think I just want to reflect to what happened when I attended the professional program. So the ACYPL didn't, they didn't ask me like, do you need help for this? Do you need help for doing that? What they ask is, can you do this by yourself, or can you do that by yourself? Which one that you cannot do by yourself, and which one that you can do by yourself? And when for things that I could do by myself, I did them by myself. So I didn't ask for any help from the ACYPL, and even the ACYPL wanted me to do everything independently, because they believe in me that I could survive in the United States alone for 6 weeks. So I think it's a good way to support people with disabilities. Give them trust to do everything by themselves unless they ask for help from you. So let me check whether we have still other questions. Looks like that was the last question that we have, but I would like to ask a question from Dr. Aisha. So the question came from me. So can you tell a little bit about what does your organization do in terms of public-private partnership between NGOs and the government to implement the ADA and other laws pertaining disability rights?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we are a government agency, and we really pride ourselves on creating partnerships with community. So other NGOs or nonprofit organizations, as well as individuals that don't necessarily have to be connected with any of those nonprofits in community. We're housed in an agency that is, the name of our agency is Human Rights and Community Partnerships. So it's really important for us on the human rights or the disability rights or the civil rights side. We do that work, but it's also important on the other side that we are really developing those community partnerships. And so both for myself and for my staff, we are always emphasizing about getting into community, becoming involved with other NGOs and or nonprofits to understand what they are doing in community. Our office also makes a point of making financial contributions to those organizations annually that are in the Denver community that are basically reaching the Denver disability community, and they are providing services within community. And today is actually a pretty exciting day. Our office put in, as we are going through this period of recovering from COVID, we put in requests for several nonprofit organizations to be able to receive assistance. And our office was approved just earlier today for $155,000 for us to be able to give out to various nonprofits in community so that they can continue their work right at a grassroots level in community to specifically serve people with disabilities and recovering from this whole pandemic. So people, they may have contracted COVID, or they may just they may just need additional assistance or additional services as a result of all that has happened with COVID. And so we are really pleased that we've been able to assist in that particular fashion. So, I would say that we give the resource of our finances, but also our time into community with NGOs and individual members of the disability community.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Aisha. So now I would like to move to Dr. Antoni. You have 1 minute to give final statement about why people with disabilities should join exchange programs. Why is it important? Dr.
Yep.
Antoni, 1
Okay.
minute for you.
All right, thank you, Abi. Yes, participating in exchange program, especially the one offered by the U.S. government, I think it's really important because it can enrich your perspectives. You're gonna have your the first-hand experience, especially when you learn right from fabulous American disability activists. And this is again my most impressive experience. Well, there are many sort of strategies that you can learn from in doing advocacy, right? Especially when it comes to a partnership between DPOs and government. So I strongly encourage young people with disability in Indonesia to take advantage of any opportunities offered to participate in this exchange program. Although we are still living in the pandemic, and nobody knows when this is going to end, but yeah, this is still a very good and enriching experience, although you will do it online. Thank you, Abi.
Yeah, thank you. And lastly, Lengga.
Okay, so for my colleague, young people, if you find opportunity like exchange program, just beat it. Just try, apply, and go for it, because these will give you such opportunities to meet brilliant people, give you knowledge, of course, expanding your networking, and of course, it's changed your mentality to be much wiser, and to be have more empathy with others. I think that's it. That's all.
Okay,
Thank you, Mas
thank you.
Adi.
Okay, thank you so much, Lengga. Thank you so much, everyone, for three of you. Thank you so much, Dr. Aisha Rousseau from Denver. Thank you so much, Dr. Antoni Tsaputra from Padang, and thank you so much, Lengga, for your participation. I think we had a good conversation today, and thank you so much for the U.S. Embassy and at America team for organizing this wonderful event. I hope we can do this event in the near future soon. And thank you for our sign language interpreters, Cintra and Innova. Thank you so much for helping us with the interpretation. I think that's all from me. That's all from all of us. And see you again. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you so much, Mas Abi, Dr. Aisha, Dr. Antoni, Mbak Lengga. Also, thank you to kakak-kakak JBI, Mbak Cintra dan Mbak Innova. We had a very inspiring session today, and we're looking forward to work with you all in the near future. Thank you very much. Now, the rest of you, please don't go anywhere, because I have the name of the winner for our social media quiz today. Earlier in this event, I asked you guys, is it true or false that Education and Cultural Affairs, or ECA, exchange program alumni encompass 500,000 people around the world? And the correct answer is false. ECA exchange program alumni encompass over 1 million people around the world, including more than 75 Nobel laureates and nearly 450 current and former heads of states and government. And our lucky winner for today is Aninda from Instagram. Congratulations, Aninda. As I mentioned earlier in the beginning of this event, America is having a very special activity this August called Academania. And we are so looking forward to your participation in it. We are giving out a voucher for the TOEFL IBT test and another American standardized test of your choice. To know more about this activity and how to join, you can visit atam.tv/academania. Now, you may be wondering, how can I develop an awesome idea for a place like this? Easy. You can go to our website at www.atamerica.or.id, click create an event, and collaborate with us. All proposals coming to us will be reviewed, and your event might be featured here soon. And while you're on our website, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletters for weekly event updates sent straight to your inbox. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at ATAmerica for event updates, fun content, and so much more. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. All right, everybody, I think that wraps up this episode. It has been really fun, but unfortunately, we have to say goodbye for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good day.